I have always found it interesting how the Bible gives us clear instructions on how to deal with the devil and the enemy's attacks. James 4:7 tells us to resist the devil, and he will flee from us. Likewise, Ephesians 6:13 encourages us to stand firm and resist the enemy in times of evil. After the battle, we are promised that we will still be standing firm. These passages emphasize standing our ground, putting on the full armor of God, and not giving the enemy any room to defeat us. But what I find even more fascinating is the Bible's approach when it comes to the sin of lust. Unlike the devil, who we are told to resist, the Bible instructs us to flee from lust. 2 Timothy 2:22 says, "Flee the evil desires of youth," and 1 Corinthians 6:18 echoes the same, saying flee from sexual immorality. Notice the difference. We are to resist the devil, but when it comes to lust, we are told not to resist, but to run away. This alone should tell you about the destructive power of lust. Why does the Bible make this distinction? Lust is a particularly dangerous temptation. It has brought down stronger men than you and I. From King David, who fell into sin with Bathsheba, to Samson, who was overcome by his desire for Delilah, lust has captured the hearts of great men throughout history. Lust can quickly overpower a person, leading them into sin and destruction if they do not escape it. This is why the Bible emphasizes fleeing, because staying in that situation and trying to fight could lead to falling. If you ever find yourself in a situation where lust is present, run. Don't stand there and try to resist temptation, just run. You can't fall into sin unless you stay in that place of temptation. Avoid being alone with the person. Avoid staying in a situation where lust can take root. There's wisdom in running. There's strength in fleeing. So, if you feel yourself being pulled into a lustful situation, run. Protect your purity, guard your heart, and obey the word of God by fleeing from lust. It may be the very thing that saves you from falling. However, the focus of our sermon today is not lust. It is about Satan and demons. In the Bible, the terms demons and unclean spirits are often used interchangeably, but there are subtle distinctions based on context. Both refer to evil spiritual beings that oppose God and influence or possess humans, but the usage of the terms can highlight different aspects of their activity or nature. Demons. The term demon, from the Greek word daimonion, generally refers to evil or malevolent spiritual beings. They are often associated with causing harm, sickness, oppression, or possession in the New Testament. Jesus cast out demons in many accounts, showing his authority over them. Demons are typically seen as part of Satan's army, working to oppose God's kingdom. Unclean spirits. The term unclean spirit is used in a similar way to demons, but often emphasizes their impurity. In Jewish thought, uncleanness relates to something that is spiritually defiling. When the Bible uses the term unclean spirit, it points to the morally corrupt nature of these spirits and how they defile those they influence or possess. The emphasis here is on the unholiness or impurity of the spirit. Many scholars and Bible commentators agree that demons and unclean spirits refer to the same kind of spiritual beings, but the Bible sometimes uses different terminology to highlight various characteristics or actions. For example, Mark 1:23-26 and Luke 4:33-36 both recount the same story of Jesus casting out an unclean spirit, but elsewhere similar spirits are referred to as demons. The same beings are being described, but the focus may shift between their moral impurity, unclean spirits, and their malevolent activity, demons. Distinction. In some contexts, unclean spirits might emphasize the defiling nature of these beings, while demons often emphasize their role in spiritual warfare. However, no clear and definitive theological distinction separates the two. Ultimately, whether the term demon or unclean spirit is used, both refer to evil spirits in opposition to God, and both are subject to Christ's authority. The Bible does not provide a detailed physical description of how demons or unclean spirits appear. However, it does offer insights into their behavior, characteristics, and how they manifest in the lives of individuals they afflict or possess. The Bible portrays them as spiritual beings that are invisible to the human eye, but can influence or possess individuals, causing various forms of harm or defilement.
Genesis chapter 3, verses 1 through 4. Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. And he said unto the woman, Yea, hath God said, Ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden? And the woman said unto the serpent, We may eat the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God hath said, Ye shall not eat of it, neither shall ye touch it, lest ye die. And the serpent said unto the woman, Ye shall not surely die. Perhaps one of the most asked and most debated topics among theologians and seekers of truth is the appearance of the serpent in the Garden of Eden. The biblical account of Adam and Eve's encounter with this cunning creature raises numerous questions that have fascinated and perplexed minds for centuries. What did the serpent actually look like? Was it a physical serpent, or did it represent something else entirely? The very mention of the serpent evokes curiosity and invites contemplation into its role and significance in the biblical narrative. As we delve into this intriguing subject, we are confronted with a myriad of inquiries. Was the serpent an earthly creature, or does it possess a deeper spiritual meaning? What is the relationship between the serpent and the devil? Did the serpent truly possess the ability to speak, or was it a metaphorical portrayal of persuasive deception? These questions challenge us to explore the theological dimensions of this enigmatic creature, seeking a deeper understanding of its purpose within the broader narrative of God's plan for humanity. With this sermon, we will look at different interpretations as to the identity of the serpent, and we will leave you to come to your own conclusion as to the appearance of the serpent. Interpretation 1. Nahash, the Shine One. 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 14. And no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. The Hebrew word Nahash indeed carries multiple layers of meaning, and when applied to the character in Genesis chapter 3, this complexity can lead to various interpretations. Meaning 1. The literal serpent. The basic and direct interpretation of Nahash is a serpent or snake. This interpretation fits the physical description and behavior in the narrative. It crawls, speaks, and tempts. The Bible doesn't explicitly state whether the serpent could stand or walk prior to its curse, but it seems plausible that it could have moved on 4 legs like other reptiles. This interpretation seems to align best with Genesis chapter 3 verse 14, which describes the curse imposed on the serpent. If the serpent already slithered, the curse and its comparison to legged creatures in Genesis chapter 3 verse 14 would seem redundant. Therefore, it's reasonable to interpret from Genesis chapter 3 verse 14 that the serpent originally possessed some form of legs. Meaning number 2 of the Hebrew word Nahash, the Shining One. In understanding the role and nature of Nahash in the Genesis narrative, the interpretation of it as the Shining One carries a deep meaning. This reading, based on the root letters that can mean to shine or relate to bronze or brass, opens up new layers of meaning that give the serpent an angelic or divine dimension. This perspective offers a striking contrast to the commonplace depiction of the serpent as a mere snake. In this context, the serpent is not a humble, crawling creature, but a radiant, impressive entity, potentially a supernatural presence linked with divine wisdom, albeit associated with a deceptive light. Such an interpretation places the Nahash as a pivotal force in the narrative, a striking figure whose impact on the plot and its characters is as profound as it is cataclysmic. These interpretations take on a richer hue when read in conjunction with other biblical texts. In Ezekiel chapter 28, verses 13 through 15, for instance, there is a description of a magnificent, perfect being present in the Garden of Eden. This figure, decked with precious stones and created as a cherub, is described as blameless until iniquity was found in it. Ezekiel chapter 28 verses 13 through 15. Thou hast been in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was thy covering, the sardius, topaz, and the diamond, the beryl, the onyx, and the jasper, the sapphire, the emerald, and the carbuncle, and gold. The workmanship of thy tabrets and of thy pipes was prepared in thee in the day that thou wast created. Thou art the anointed cherub that covereth, and I have set thee so. Thou wast upon the holy mountain of God. Thou hast walked up and down in the midst of the stones of fire. Thou wast perfect in thy ways from the day that thou wast created, till iniquity was found in thee. There is no doubt that this is a beautiful creature, as per the description given in the book of Ezekiel. If God mentions that this creature was in the garden, it logically follows that it might be the Nahash, the shining one, mentioned in Genesis chapter 3, verse 1. Many scholars have long debated the identity of this figure in Ezekiel. Some suggest it's a reference to the historical king of Tyre, while others contend it represents a broader figure, often identified as Satan or Lucifer. An earthly king wouldn't realistically be able to claim that they were in Eden, serve as the anointed cherub who covers, or reside on the holy mountain of God. Thus, many scholars who study the Bible propose that Ezekiel chapter 28 verses 11 through 19 serves as a dual prophecy, drawing parallels between the arrogance of the king of Tyre and the vanity and pride exhibited by Satan. The passage in Ezekiel paints a picture of a figure who was in Eden, was adorned with jewels, walked among the fiery stones, was blameless from creation until iniquity was found within, and was cast down as a profane thing. Comparing this passage with the interpretation of the Nahash as the shining one, there could be a correlation between the two entities. Both are described as radiant or shining. Both are associated with wisdom, albeit deceptive or corrupted, and both are present in the garden, playing roles in the disruption of paradise. This link provides a fascinating cross-textual perspective that adds depth to our understanding of these characters. It hints at a more profound, more complicated entity than a simple serpent. The Shining One, as per this interpretation, then represents a luminous, angelic figure who is somehow twisted into becoming a source of deception and sin. Proponents of the Shining One interpretation argue that the one textual evidence. This interpretation is based on the Hebrew root letters of Nahash, which can indeed mean to shine or be related to bronze or brass. This gives the interpretation a linguistic basis. 2. Cross-textual analysis. Linking the Shining One with the figure in Ezekiel 28 adds a rich cross-textual dimension to the interpretation. The similarities between the two figures provide a broader narrative arc that spans multiple books of the Bible. 3. Alignment with later traditions. 2 Corinthians chapter 11 verse 14. And no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. Arguments against the Shining One interpretation goes as follows. 1. Literal reading. The simplest reading of Nahash is as a literal serpent. The Shining One interpretation, while linguistically possible, might be seen as overcomplicating the narrative. 2. Varied interpretations of Ezekiel chapter 28. The figure in Ezekiel 28 is often interpreted as a lament for the historical king of Tyre or as a metaphorical figure representing human pride and arrogance, rather than a literal fallen angel or divine being. Interpretation 2. A standard serpent. Interpreting Nahash in the most literal sense, it signifies an actual serpent or snake. This creature is depicted as crafty and deceitful, playing a crucial role in the fall of Adam and Eve. Here, the serpent symbolizes cunning and temptation, leading the first humans astray from God's command. A noteworthy aspect of the Genesis narrative is that it seems to suggest the serpent had a form that was more similar to other animals before being cursed. The Bible does not directly indicate whether the serpent stood upright or walked before the curse. yet it is feasible that the creature moved about on 4 legs, akin to other reptiles. This notion aligns well with the phrasing of Genesis chapter 3, verse 14, where God condemns the serpent. The text states, "Because you have done this, cursed are you above all livestock and all wild animals. You will crawl on your belly, and you will eat dust all the days of your life." This curse suggests a transformation. If the serpent already slithered on its belly, the curse would be redundant. Instead, the serpent's comparison to other creatures with legs suggests a transformation from a form with legs to one without. This interpretation, while literal, does not portray the serpent as a supernatural entity in its own right. Instead, it implies that Satan somehow took control or entered the body of the serpent to manipulate Adam and Eve. Therefore, the figure behind the serpent is Satan himself. The serpent served merely as the tool or vessel used by the devil to carry out his plan. This interpretation concludes that the tempter was the devil, using the form of a serpent as a disguise. The Bible does contain instances of spirit beings using animals or taking their form. A notable example is found in the story of Balaam in Numbers chapter 22, verses 21 through 35. In this narrative, Balaam's donkey is given the ability to speak, to rebuke Balaam when he doesn't see the angel of the Lord blocking their path. This incident illustrates a situation where a divine entity directly interferes with the natural abilities of an animal. While not identical, it is a somewhat parallel situation and offers a biblical precedent for interpreting the serpent in Genesis chapter 3 as a tool of a spiritual being, in this case, Satan. Proponents of this interpretation argue that 1. Textual simplicity. This interpretation doesn't require reading between the lines or inferring deeper meanings. The text straightforwardly depicts the serpent as a real animal that was used as a tool by Satan. 2. Consistent with other biblical themes. The Bible often depicts Satan as a deceptive figure who leads people into sin. This interpretation aligns with those themes. 3. Precedent for supernatural interference. The interpretation draws on other biblical examples, like the story of Balaam's donkey, which showcase supernatural beings influencing animals. Those who argue against this literal interpretation state, 1. Lack of direct evidence. The Bible doesn't explicitly state that Satan entered the serpent. This part of the interpretation is inferred and not directly supported by the text. 2. Doesn't fully address serpent's punishment. If Satan merely used the serpent, it could be argued that the punishment of the serpent to crawl on its belly is harsh and unwarranted. The interpretation doesn't fully resolve this moral question. Each interpretation brings its strengths and weaknesses. There are many more interpretations regarding the serpent in the garden. Today we have only outlined. Out of the 2 interpretations outlined, which one do you prescribe to?